Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Wynonna Earp as well as the latest episode of Outcast. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I can do a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Wynonna Earp, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Outcast. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Wynonna Earp, a great episode. A lot of interesting things went down this episode. Let's break it down. So at first, that whole thing about like Wynonna and Doc, I wasn't 100% sure like what was going on with that, because I was like, wait, you're having sex? And I was like, I figured it had to be some kind of spell or something, but I was like, okay, what's up with that? I'm not understanding. It's like Bullshar putting them under a spell. I'm wondering, does Nicole have some kind of connection to Bullshar? I mean, obviously, there's something there because she's connected to Massacre and all of that. But the fact is, when she was about to leave the bar and she stopped for a second, because it's almost like there's something there. There might be some like underlying relationship, because for such a long time, it's kind of like, oh, like Bobo might be Waverly's dad. It's kind of like the thought process, but it's like maybe something similar to that might be what might be dealing with Nicole. I mean, to be fair, we know about her parents, but I mean, who's to say she isn't adopted or something like that? It's, but we don't know what that real connection is or whatever. So the whole episode is actually kind of tragic and kind of messed up in a way, but Wynonna is able to kind of break free of the curse a little bit. His spell, at least for a little bit. And she did that badass move where she kicked one of like the followers, and then she did a flip and start kicking some ass, because for her, it's like Peacemaker still kind of kicks in from time to time and kind of break her from that spell. I think it's probably a combination of Peacemaker probably feeds off her will a little bit. So like the stronger her will is, and she's a very stubborn person, that, it can kind of snap her out of things. But like she's stuck in this endless loop of dying and repeating, and Doc is stuck, being buried alive. First, it's the whole Shorties thing, and she's constantly getting killed. First, poison arrow, an arrow, then a poison dart, then acid, molten spike through her eye, like over and over again. Kind of like a live, die, repeat type of thing. Or that horror movie that came out recently. That was kind of like Groundhog's Day, but in a horror movie format. So, but it seemed like she might have went to the next stage. She ends up back at the homestead, well, home in particular. Then there's the whole her and Bobo situation. I love that you almost see her kind of lose track of time, because it's like, whoa, Doc, why are you so much buried so much more? It's like, because you have killed Bobo multiple times and it's constantly restarted. So it's like, not only if she dies does it restart, also when Bobo dies it restarts. It's kind of sad because, she even makes comparisons too, because she's like, oh, I'm kind of like a revenant now. She's like, oh yeah, now she kind of realizes how sucky that situation is, dying and kind of repeating like all over and over and over again during this cycle. And I love that Doc is like, you should probably take a rest. She's like, you're right. She's like, man, I remember back when I didn't ever try. She's like, man, I've changed so much, man, so. But like the tragedy of that situation, but the sad but beautiful thing about it is, like, even though it was under a spell and everything, her and Doc did make some headway in the situation, because it's like, she's like, I wish, I'd never give up on you, Doc. I wish you didn't give up on me. But he's like, I'd never give up on you, never. And I'd never give up on Alice either. The fact of the matter is, even saying like, because you try one more time for me, if you find, if you don't think I deserve it, if you think I'm unworthy. And she's like, it'd be so much easier if you were unworthy. But she knows that he's a good guy at heart, and that's what makes the whole situation complicated with how she feels about him and just their circumstances. It'd be easy just to turn her back on him and leave him on, but he's such, if he was such a terrible person, but he's not. He's a good guy at heart, so just that like tragic, like circling back and forth. We also learned some interesting things too, because for one, like he needs Wynonna to get into the garden because she has the tower. Peacemaker, that's the key to getting inside of the garden. Also, Peacemaker doesn't work on him, because it's like, well, because he's like, I guess it's mainly because it's like, well, he was the OG demon in this situation. The fact of the matter is, it always makes it seem like Clooney was a human beforehand, but it's like, I guess it's because he's OG demon, because he's the one that started the curse, but he was a demon even before, the whole curse situation. So he was kind of OG demon already. And so Peacemaker can only take down revenants that were built upon, like, that were created because of the curse and everything. So the fact is that he had the gunshot wound and he was like, oh, the fact of the matter is you and I are connected. I can't keep you here any longer. I was like, oh, because the others are closing in. I know I'm skipping around and stuff, but I was like, oh man, because they're closing in. It's like, just hold on a little bit longer, Wynonna. And I was like, the moment he was like, you and I are connected, I was like, oh, if she kills him, she dies too. It seems like that might be what he is implying because their destinies are connected. So they are probably intertwined too. If Wynonna probably wants to break the curse, like she'd probably have to, like, killing him would probably ultimately end up killing herself. And that won't stop the curse most likely because it'd probably be just a situation of he'd eventually come back and it'd be on Alice to deal with that, So that's what I'm thinking because, if it was just as simple as an heir, an Earp dying, like plenty of Earp heirs have subsequently died, but it didn't stop the curse. So I'm thinking in this particular case, it wouldn't, but because they themselves, because in that entire time, no one has come toe to toe with, Bulshar subsequently since White. He was the last person to go toe to toe with him. And that was before, the whole curse was activated. So subsequently, every other, Earp has gone toe to toe with the Revenants, but never Bulshar himself. So that's kind of an interesting thing to think about. Like, how do you fight him then if Peacemaker won't be the means to do it? You would think it would be, but maybe it just takes certain circumstances and stuff. I mean, there was one bullet that was meant to be, potentially a weapon against Bulshar, the one they used to kill the widows last season. So part of me wonders, could you think it could be like they do a similar thing, but they use the ring, Bulshar's ring? Because it's interesting, at no point in time is he really worried about that too much. Because it's like, this is all about, because this isn't about the curse for him. This is all about, revenge in a sense of, and this, what he's doing in this particular case is he's punishing everyone. He's punishing Doc because it's like, you turned down my deal. He's punishing Wynonna because it's like, you're an Earp and I'm going to enjoy breaking you. And that's what it's all about. And he did that mindfuck where it's kind of like, oh man, like they made it out. I was like, is it really going to be that easy? Like, I thought there was more to it. It's like, no, Bulshar's not dead. It's like, they think he's dead, but there's a complicated. And then you hear Nicole's voice. I was like, why? Because the thing is, at first, because I was like, don't tell me this is, because it's like, why would they be back in the barn? Because the last time we saw him, the last time we saw Wynonna fully awake and out of the spell was when Bulshar doubled up on her, and they were in the woods at that time. So I'm like, why would you be back there? And it's just like, oh man. And then it repeats all over again. So it's hard to say at what point in time is like what's real and what's 100% fake, because Doc kind of gets caught up in the repeat. Wynonna remembers everything. And that's to the point. Wynonna's supposed to remember everything. But I think subconsciously, even though he's separated from her, Doc is still there trying to tell her, like, don't give up. But she's so beaten down and broken because he's like, he's making her confront probably the thing she's scared of most, the people that are the most important to her, in this case, Doc and Waverly both being gone and them dying alone. And it's just because, like, I abandoned them. I was so in this fight that I wasn't there for them. So, like, that was what he was kind of pulling at. It's just like, you'll let them go. Like, I think, he's like, you have my word. And, like, I always keep my word. A part of me was like, no, they're right there. Wynonna, you can hold on for a little bit. The fact of the matter is, it makes you wonder, would they have been able to wake him up? I mean, they woke Bobo up because Bobo admits that, like, he wasn't strong enough because even he was broken by Bulshar. It does make you wonder, why did Bulshar do that? I guess because, like, Bobo didn't keep up his end of the bargain or whatever. I guess because it's that whole fealty situation. So I don't know. It's a very interesting situation. Like, why would he need Bobo? Like, what was the purpose of that? I mean, I guess Bobo played his part in all of this too, kind of like feeding into the cycle of Wynonna. Like, because you thought that maybe she was kind of getting the upper hand. It seemed like she was making her way through it. But then it's like, nope. Lupol again kind of shows you just how powerful he is. Because to be fair, those woods are his. He controls that area. He makes you see and feel what he wants you to. Because the easiest way to defeat an Earp is to break them, to break her mentally, to break her heart, And he did all that, and that's why he kind of won in the end, sadly, On the other side of things, kind of tying everything together, we had Mercedes popping back up. I was so excited. I was like, Mercedes. I literally kept asking about her. The reason why we haven't seen her, it seems like basically she's been going around trying to fix her face. So it looks good, but it's still kind of scarred up and everything. So Tucker changed the safe combination, so she needs it open, so Nicole shoots it for her. So it's like she's going to try and find a doctor who's really good at fixing, faces, so she can get her face back. And she's it's kind of interesting because the Mercedes we see right now, the one who's kind of a little bitchy and stuff like that, we saw a little bit of that Mercedes last season, but not to this extent, because now it's like, oh, like everything you Earps touched kind of turns to shit, because it's just kind of like she's getting a little pissy because it's like her face and everything, and she's talking about Waverly with that ring on her finger, because it seems like she touched Derek was super into like the ring and stuff like that, and it's just kind of like, and I love that little like nod to last season where like he pulls out the buzzsaw, Derek pulls out the buzzsaw, and like Waverly kind of jumps back a little bit. She's like, sorry, I just had this thing about, losing appendages again. And then Nicole's like, she's just joking. He's like ovulating. And she's like, ew, gross, dude, no. And he's just being all creepy and stuff and wanting the ring. Turns out, Derek's a revenant. It seems like his thing is kind of electricity. Like, it's like, well, not necessarily electricity, but like he can cut stuff with his fingers, which I guess kind of fits the whole situation, because he thought if he could get the ring back, that'll be the price of his fealty, so he'll be free of his debt to Bulshar. But it apparently didn't end well for him, because he got his face burned off by Waverly, which is always interesting when you think about that stuff. Like, you never get to see the aftermath of it, but it's like, oh yeah, because that's not enough to kill him. I mean, it messed him up. It probably took a while for his face to finally regenerate, but it's like, yeah, if it isn't Peacemaker, they don't die. You do kind of forget that, like, no matter how messed up things are, like the dude from the facility her mom was at, it's like, oh yeah, like ripped off the dude's head and it's still like attached to it later on. So it's that thing you kind of like forget, like, oh yeah, Revenants can take quite a beating. And now it's kind of got everybody scared to the point like Waverly's putting on a mitten. But Bobo let something slip that was kind of very interesting, because we ended up finding out apparently it's like, oh, you found your father's ring. She was about to tell it to Wynonna, but she kind of dropped the subject like when things kind of started, So, which is interesting. Like the whole her being an angel thing, and on top of that, like her dad potentially being an angel. So it's like, whatever that ring thing is, like if it's her dad's ring, how did Bulshar get it? Because we do know that it is old, because we found out last episode, Kate said it herself, like that. Was it last episode? Yeah, because Kate was like, yeah, that thing is like one of the oldest things on Earth. So it's like, if it's Julian's, how did Bulshar get it, Was that something he only got? No, like I don't remember, like in the past when we saw his past last season. I think he did have the ring on, didn't he? I'm blanking. I'm not. The smaller details always kind of catch me off guard, because I was trying to think, like, at what point in time would, like, if it was Julian's, why would he have it? So not unless there's some like deeper connection between Bulshar and Waverly. We see that it gives her enhanced powers, like what it can do to a revenant, and it gave her superhuman strength, but beyond that, we don't know if there's any consequences to using that. Like, is it shortening her life or anything like that? Because obviously, like, it has Nicole and everyone else worried, because it's like that thing's as destructive as it is. But it turns out it's not all bad, because it seemed like when Waverly touched Mercedes's face, it seems like it healed it. So it seems like that thing, depending on the person, and I guess in particular Waverly's intent, like if her intent is to hurt and protect, like it can go in offensive mode, but if it can also be used to heal, so maybe the ring will be the only thing that can affect Bulshar. But that kind of goes back to it once again. Why does it keep coming back to Nicole out of anybody? I mean, if it belongs to Julian, maybe that's kind of the thing. It's connected by love, like Michelle and Julian's whole situation. Maybe it kind of reflects like that, because, and that's something I brought up before, is like maybe it has that connection because of Nicole and Waverly's connection. So because it's kind of a mirror of the true love between, I mean, to be fair, it's kind of like, well, Michelle is kind of a normal person, Julian potentially an angel. It's like, well, that same relationship is reflected by the fact is that, Nicole's a normal human and Waverly, something else, an angel, changeling, whatever the case may be. Which, to be fair, now, once again, is like, well, there might be more to Nicole than that too. So it's like, I don't know. It's definitely going to be interesting to see where we go from here in the next episode. like I said, we have our main antagonist Bullshar kind of winning now. What's interesting too is the fact is that Wynonna said that she never saw the staircase. Everyone else saw it. Jeremy saw it, Nicole saw it, and so did Waverly, but Wynonna didn't. So it's like maybe only the righteous can see it. Like, those of pure heart, which I guess that says a lot about those three, which Waverly, no surprise. Nicole, no surprise either. But, and Jeremy, I guess, no surprise too, because they were the most innocent. But I guess it's like Wynonna and Doc definitely have their demons and their stuff. There was kind of that powerful moment too, where like Wynonna was kind of like giving up. She's like, do you think we're in hell? Is this hell? And he's like, no. She's like, how can you be so sure? It's like, when I was in hell, I was alone, darling. But you're here with me. So obviously this ain't hell. So it does beg the question too, like Mercedes was at the Gardner place, but it's like, where the hell is Kate at? Like, what is she up to? I mean, the whole thing with Doc didn't work out, so it's like, did she leave? I doubt she's 100% left, because it's like, leaving won't really do her any good. I know she's probably trying to get as far away from Bullshar as she can, but there probably is no running far, before like he catches up to you. So I am curious to see like how this will ultimately all play out. I mean, there's that whole storyline. I'm blanking on his name, but the dude earlier in the season that came for Doll's funeral, like he's doing the whole black badge thing. Like you wonder, like that hasn't circled back into the story in a while. So maybe that will come back through to kind of help. There's also the Charlie situation, and there's a complicated situation between Wynonna and Doc, because they weren't on good terms 100%. They were kind of easing tensions, but I think this is going to aggravate that even more, because it's like for Doc, it's like he feels, because he said it himself, like, I'd never give up on you. And probably Wynonna doing what she did makes him feel like you gave up on me. You gave up on all of us doing that. Like, oh yeah, just hold on a little bit longer. And also just the significance, Peacemaker. I'm not sure he's going to look at her that harshly, but, Wynonna herself will definitely definitely does look at herself that harshly. So I'm curious to see where things kind of go there, Also, once again, it's like, man, this show is dirty. I feel like this season has gotten super dirty, because it's just kind of like, like the purpose innuendos and stuff, like when Nicole was trying to pull off the ring, and it's just like, we need more lube and stuff like that. And what was it? Jeremy made some reference of like, what was it about beavers or something like that? And he was like, Nicole and Waverly would know all about that. And Nicole kind of gives him a stare. It's like, there's so much dirty talk in this. And then there's the whole, like, even though it was in their heads, the whole like Dog and Wynonna. Like I said, like, I feel like the innuendos are even stronger this season and stuff like that, but maybe that's just me. Like, it's probably just as much as it has been other seasons, but I feel like it's a lot more this season. But like I said, it might just be my head. So like I said, I'm very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us with this whole situation. It seems like it wouldn't be just that easy, because it doesn't seem like Bullshar's 100% won yet. It's kind of interesting because the stairs supposedly only show up for good people, the righteous. So that means even he can't find the stairs, right? So how does he plan on fixing that? Like, not unless he plans on using one of them as a guide to try and find the stairs, because they popped up now, but they disappear. Like, wouldn't it somebody try looking for them later on and they disappear? Well, there's the whole Robin thing too, because let's not forget, Robin has a connection to Bullshar. Subsequently, not something, I'm sure he didn't mean to do that on purpose, but, that connection is there. So, like I said, we'll just have to wait and see what the next episode has in store for us. And now moving on to this week's episode of Outcast. Quite a few things went down in this episode, so we got to break it down. There's a whole situation with Blake popping back in the story. I never thought that kind of circled back the way it did, but that's kind of interesting. It seems like there's something special with him. First, like he has like this vision of Kyle, and he's like, no. It's almost like he's got this feeling like the merger won't go down the way people think it is, just because it's like Kyle is not alone or something. I don't know whether it's kind of representing like other beacons, or is it representing the fact is, like I brought up earlier, when I was discussing early parts of the seasons of him gathering up an army, is that what he saw? Basically, it almost seemed like he had a vision of like things aren't going to go 100% our way. And Dr. Park was there. I was like, oh, he's at the execution. I was like, okay, that's interesting. Why? Oh, because he faked it. So the big question is, it seems like he's saying that something's different about Blake because Blake, when he came here, he was already in isolation and separated from everyone. So it seems like that has some effect because it ends up being something Blake brings up later on because he's like, yeah, because everyone's afraid of Kyle because it's like he's the outcast, one touch and you're done. But it's like, he's like, no, he tried to touch me, but nothing ever happened. So at first I was just thinking like, oh, that was just because he was stuck in there for so long. But to be fair, it seems like the same thing with Sydney. I mean, to be fair, he hasn't had a chance to be extensively touching Sydney. But even those that have been in there for a long period of time, he could still rip them out. Granted, it'll turn into a situation like Charlotte and Sarah, but still, he could do it. But the fact of the matter is, it didn't even come to that with Blake. So I thought it was just because at the time I was like, oh, he just didn't grab onto him long enough. And I was like, no, maybe there's something more to it. Maybe he's built up some immunity, or maybe he's evolved and he's changed because he doesn't seem like he's in the same condition that someone like Sydney's in. Because it seems like amongst anyone, Sydney seems to be like the one that's dying. I mean, granted, maybe he's like one of the oldest ones in the situation, or maybe it is differs between the different possessions. Maybe like some possessions kind of run through the bodies faster than others. There's a lot to that situation we don't know that like Parks is trying to figure out. He wants to use Blake as a guinea pig, but he wants to track down Anderson and Kyle. I don't know whether it's revenge or there's more to it. I assume it's revenge, but him getting close to Megan and stuff like that. Which Megan had an interesting storyline this episode too, because it's like it turns out like it's something I didn't even think about. She was pregnant at the time she was possessed. So it's kind of like Dakota's just kind of like, oh, no, everything's fine. Because Megan's like, I feel a little weird. Like, it didn't feel like the same way it was with Holly. And so Dakota was kind of like, no, everything's okay. And sends her off to a doctor, which later on that doctor seems like that doctor's trying to get rid of her baby because it's like, yeah, but you were freed, but that baby wasn't. So it almost seems like Dakota was kind of not planning for that. It's like, no, I want you to examine the baby, sure. But it seems like they're all kind of a little bit of fanatical because it's like, oh, we're chosen warriors for this fight. And the fact of the matter is, like, you're not willing to see it because it almost made it seem like she was implying that Dakota isn't willing to make those sacrifices too. So it kind of seems like it might be a situation of like Dakota was just like, check her out, be wary of that, but like, probably wasn't down for, or maybe it was kind of implying that Dakota was willing to do that. I don't know, because I'm sure it's unforeseen circumstances. The fact is, I'm sure like there's no precedent set by this particular situation, which I'm wondering, is that why Blake kind of took an interest in Megan, because he kind of found out a little bit from Holly about the whole situation, like, oh, my mom throws up but she lies about it, and he was kind of like, huh, I wonder did he kind of piece that together or not. The fact is that he went to check on Megan. So, like I said, I figured this was all about trying to get close to Kyle and Anderson, sure, but it's like, the fact is he saved her and everything. Well, it could, like, to me, I'm thinking, because the lady, the doctor, she could immediately tell that he was still possessed, and he's like, oh, that'll be our little secret, and he killed her. Like, what I'm curious, though, is what did Megan hear? Did Megan hear that? Or was Megan too delirious on the drugs? Because the doctor actually drugged her to do it, which is like super messed up. Especially considering the fact is that's Kyle's sister. I guess you didn't think about the ramifications about that. Like when it's all said and done, if Kyle found out you did that, you'd kind of piss off like one of the big people that's important to this whole holy fight you're trying, like this holy war that you're trying to wage. So I guess that just wasn't a thought process of hers. But Megan kind of looks a little freaked out, but the question is it because she heard what would happen, or was it just kind of like, oh wow, you strangled the hell out of that lady, but you saved me, so is she going to look at Blake as her savior? Because the thing is, Anderson and Kyle both know what Blake's situation is, so like I said, I'm curious to see, like, is there some change there, or is it, like, is he just, like, part of me is wondering, it's like, if Megan did hear what he said, she might not be able to do nothing because she's still all drugged up, so he might take her as a means to draw Kyle and Anderson in, but even amongst that, we still don't know what his end goal is, because the fact of the matter is no one wants him going after Kyle anyway, because it's like he's outcast, he's important to this whole merger situation. But I think it's also because of his vision that's kind of making him want to take in a different approach to the situation, because he saw something that no one else did. So I think for him, it's like, no, we got to take care of the situation now. So that might be what that's stemming on to. We'll have to wait and see what that ends up turning into. But I'm very interested to see. Like I said, how that situation plays out is 100% determined by whether Megan heard the conversation or not about him being possessed or not. If she didn't, he's just going to be her hero. He might still like secretly like, oh yeah, I'm close to you and everything, but secretly I'm telling your brother and Anderson where I am, that I have you captured, but you think everything between us is good. That, or she did hear the conversation and she's still kidnapped. Like I said, we'll see in the end. Also, this episode, I love Kyle went to go, he got stitched up by a doctor, kind of forced her hand. And she said, like, what you're doing to us isn't helping us. It's more so like, because I guess when Kyle said, I'm trying to help you, I guess she's talking more so, she thought he was talking about us as in the things inside. Like, you're trying to help the humans, sure, you might be helping them, you're kind of making them more broken, sure. They're when they're with us, they're more complete, but besides all that is the fact is that you're screwing us over. Like the whole merger thing, all of this is so we can get away from our world. You might be trying to help those people, but when you're saying you're helping us, you're screwing us, the things possessing people over. So there's that whole situation. It turns out Giles sent that police officer to pick Kyle up, and Kyle kicked the shit out of him. It's like, oh, that guy's a good guy. Also, the moment Kyle touched him, nothing happened, but I guess Kyle was just too worried because he also found out his mom was missing, so that turns into a whole thing too. But Kyle is suggesting to do something his dad had planned originally. It's like, find out who in town isn't possessed. You basically divide the town into allies and enemies. You let everyone know what is going down. Obviously, it's a hard pill to swallow, but the fact of the matter is, everyone's got a feeling like there's some weird shit going down in town, so people aren't going to be like super... I mean, there are going to be people who are reluctant to believe. Hell, Megan was definitely one of those people. Allison was one of those people, but now it's just kind of after everything that's going down and everything that's happened, it's like, okay, there's more to this. So... it's going to be interesting to see on that front. We have Giles. He wants to handle the fight in his own way. He's staying locked and loaded because he's trying to protect Rosie. Because more so than anything, it's his way of kind of like, because I don't think he wants to take part in this fight because he blames himself. Because he's like, I nearly killed you, Kyle. Kyle's like, dude, it wasn't you. He's like, it was me. That was bullshit. It was because I was weak, which Kyle was like, dude, no one can fight this thing. Like, no one's that strong enough to fight that. The fact is they added that to the conversation makes me wonder, there's probably someone strong enough to fight that. I mean, they wouldn't do it to an outcast because I guess that's what the whole situation, but like, could they possess like a beacon or an outcast? Like, would that be even possible for them is the question, So it might be a situation of someone in their circumstances might be able to. What if they, just kind of a random thought, what if it could be like a situation of someone that's strong enough to fight the possession? What if they, well, to be fair, we kind of know that his mom kind of fought it for as long as she could. But the fact, maybe that's kind of what that's kind of insinuating. But also, like, what if we end up finding out someone who is able to fight the possession? What if that kind of creates a beacon or an outcast in a sense, Like I said, we still kind of don't know how those play out and how those really kind of come to be beacons and outcasts, So, with the whole Giles situation, you can tell like they're on edge, they're kind of alone to themselves because once again, you don't know who in town is possessed, so they're kind of keeping to themselves. They got some allies here and there, but Nunez shows up. Doesn't end well for her. Claymore or mine underneath the ground explodes, and Giles puts her down. So it's so interesting because you see Rose seeming so detached. Part of me was like when he came back and was talking to her, but she wasn't responding. I was like, did she get possessed in just that quickly or something like that? But it seems like maybe that's not the case. I guess just for her, it's just kind of like, everything that's going down, it's just kind of like, where do we go from here, essentially? What are their next plans? Because it's just kind of like, they're not going to leave us alone now. Because, like, especially in Nunez's case, because she was like, he's still too much of a danger to be left on his own because he can still rally because as that officer showed, there are people in town who would follow Giles even amongst all this craziness. So it's like he's not to be taken lightly, especially like if he's on Kyle's side too, like in a sense of like we'd rather have them either out of the picture or at least on our side so it can change things. Once again, it's that situation of once you're possessed, can you be repossessed? It's like, oh no, like she talked about Rose, but she didn't talk about Giles because it's like, I guess, like I said, is that situation of once. It's kind of like a similar show. It's actually kind of interesting. No, it's not. I was about to say it's in Image Comics, but it's not. It was Van Helsing, because it's like, once you're turned back to a human in Van Helsing, there's no going back. Like, you are forever changed back to being a human. So I'm wondering about that, If the kind of similar rules apply, like I said, we still don't know, because that's something everyone's freaking out about. Like, can we be possessed again? So... other than that, Kyle learned some very interesting things. For one, he learned out about what Helen's plan was. basically she gathered up other beacons, and later on Sydney kind of refers to it as purifying them. Basically she drilled holes in their heads because it's like ripping away the human side of them and leaving only the beacon. And Bob was like, okay, we're going to separate them, scatter them around. But it turns out, like, when he came back, Simon, Kyle's dad, ended up shooting all of them because he was like, no, it was too much of a danger. Which even Kyle's like, why would he do that? They're beacons like him, like us. And he was, and Bob was like, it was a mercy. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But he was like, that was the last time him and Simon had talked, because it's like Simon killed 8 innocent people in that situation. And it's just like, but I guess in his mind, it's that situation of we're in this war. We have to do whatever it takes. And like I said, it seems like the people at the lighthouse are kind of like that too. They're kind of, at least that doctor is. We don't know how radicalized Dakota is. The rest of them are. So, but they're willing to probably cross that line if need be. Because this is like, they're fighting for humanity. So if sacrifices have to be made, those sacrifices have to be made. So it seems like that's the mentality they have. So that was a very interesting detail. But like I said, we still don't 100% know what it means, the whole purification, like what that does exactly, drilling into their head, like how exactly that removes the human part of them. Like when they're possessing people, is it almost kind of like a parasite that latches onto the brain? Is that what that is? Like, do you need to kill a certain part of the brain to kill the person? Because is it kind of like a zombie situation? Once again, kind of this being a more apt comparison, considering the fact is this is Image Comics, and there's also by Robert Kirkman, the person who made The Walking Dead, like getting all semantics and going off on a tangent. Sorry about that, but nevertheless, it's like if you kill the brain, the human side dies, so it leaves them to kind of be a puppet by like whatever's there. So like their beacon side, that's connected to all of this, to connect it to these things from this other world, that essence, that light is all there is once you remove, like maybe the human side of things dulls the light, but by having them all gathered and removing the human aspect to it, you free the light. So that might be what it means to purify them, because humans might like dull it a little bit. We have Anderson in this whole situation with Sydney getting like a little torturous, cutting him up a little bit. Not putting a symbol in him like I thought he would. I was like, oh, you're going to cut the symbol into him like he did you. It's like, nope, he cut like a, would that be considered, is that considered like a satanic star? I guess what he put in Anderson's chest last season. But this season, it's like, this time he put like a cross on Sydney's chest, which is interesting too, because he kind of figured out that, like, yeah, Aaron's probably dead, isn't he? I haven't seen him for a while. I was like, yeah, you would probably piece that together, because, he was so intent on screwing with you and killing you that he hasn't attempted it in a long while. So I was like, yeah, he's most likely dead. But Sydney's like, oh, I did you a favor and all that stuff. And he's like, oh, thank you kindly and stuff like that. So, but you had Dakota kind of telling him, it's like, that's not how we handle things. The fact of the matter is they want to go about things different. Because for her, she was like, we're going to try and use Sydney as, I forgot what the exact wording she used, but kind of making him an ally, because she knows it's too deep and too rooted in Sydney to kind of pull back. He can't be like them. But I guess she's going to try and speak to some part of him, was kind of the whole point of it. Because their Messiah didn't show up because he's kind of preoccupied. He sent her, Dakota, a text talking about it. So I'm curious to see like what... Well, because for one, it was kind of interesting hearing Sydney kind of talk about the fact is like, you talk about religion and stuff like that, which religion halfway got it right, talking about us possessing and stuff like that. But the fact is, like, all the, like, speaking tongues and stuff like that, like the typical signs of demonic stuff, that was us. We implemented that. Like, the fact of the matter is, we kind of spun those tails, and now, like, religion ate it up. The fact of the matter is, I'm no more devil than I am God. Well, like... If I am, you're not wrong to call me a devil, but I'm just as much God as I am the devil, Kind of saying, like, everything that kind of religion's kind of built around, like, we kind of set that in motion. Which I'm guessing is him implying that they've been around a very, very long time. Maybe they haven't been into this world as the extent that they are now, but, maybe this whole murder thing isn't just as... recent, obviously we know this goes back at the very least 30 years, but who's to say it doesn't go back even further, like the beginning, like those things of, I mean, they are from another world, so who's to say that, hasn't been around for a while. So that's what it seemed like. Because it never crossed my mind to think, like, oh yeah, these things are probably super old, especially having the collective knowledge that they do, having been around as much as they have. I guess that's also kind of how they adjust to society so quickly, because they've had enough time to view other people, be like, oh, we can just adjust to society, because it's like all the information we gather. Because I like this episode, the way Blake put it. It is kind of like they do have this collective net of knowledge that they kind of brought that up this season. I thought was kind of an interesting aspect of like how they know what they know when they get here and stuff is because of that said collective knowledge. So what I also thought was kind of interesting is Kyle didn't get pissed at Anderson for doing what he did. It's just kind of like, oh, very productive, weren't you? And Anderson's like, honestly, it did make me feel a little bit better. And Dakota's like, so how are we going to handle this situation? And Kyle's like, well, we just kind of have to figure it out by ear, because it's like, like I said, he tells Dakota, like, you and your people, you tell as many people, try and convince them, get them here. But then, like, Sydney says a very interesting thing where he's like, it's hypocritical. You want to call us monsters? Look at you as humans. Like, there's 7 billion people out here. Look at the human I'm in. He was a monster. He was a terrible person. But look, I removed him from the equation by possessing him. You should be thanking me. And he's like, there could be, amongst those 7 billion people, there could be other Sydneys out there too. People who've done just as terrible things or even worse. So kind of saying, like, who's the real monster in this type of situation? So it's like we're the lesser of two evils. I mean, we're not even evil in the first place. We're just creatures from another world coming to this world trying to make things better for you and for us. Which is interesting because you consider Park's situation, Dr. Parks, because for him it's like, it seems like he's running a coup, which is, I didn't expect that to be what his storyline ends up being, because for him it's not about the great merger anymore. For him it's about living here, because he's like, oh, what if we could decide who we want to be? It's all about making their life, because that's the question. Like, the fact is he's setting that all up makes it seem like even when the great merger happens, these bodies are still going to die. So the question is, like, once they die of this, like, obviously once, I mean, because we're still not 100% sure what happens when they just die. We know Helen never made it back with her intelligence. So when they die in that regard, they just die. But what happens when the, like, human body gets out? Like in Sydney's case, like, is that it dying as well because they come together? I'd assume so. Or will it go back to their world? So, because the way Parks is kind of making it seem like it's like this issue is bad now and it's still going to be just as bad when the merger happens. The great merger isn't going to fix that. Like, he's like, everyone's so focused on getting to that goal, but we're not worried about the goal afterwards. Like, the living here, it's just like we have our own plans and stuff, but like it seems like Parks in particular is like he wants to live his life here, to enjoy, like he likes being who he is. But the way he says, like, be whoever we want to, I guess it's like either reinvent the body we're possessing or kind of implementing that when the merger happens, we will be able to kind of switch bodies wherever we want to. But that way we can pick whatever body we want to without having to worry about them burning out. We can be whoever we want to and stay that person for as long as we want to. So it's kind of interesting. He even ends up killing the council because they wouldn't agree and follow him in his beliefs. He didn't really give them too much of a chance before it turns out it's like, oh yeah, he poisoned them. It's like, what were you going to do if they had actually said that they were like on your side, considering the fact that you poisoned them? It's like, you'd already put it in their system and everything. So I don't know. And it's definitely going to be interesting. I mean, Sydney's captured right now, so it's not like he can be in Park's way. But, like, where we go from this. It seems like the council is like the highest authority, so now that they're kind of out of the way, I guess Parks is just going to lie and be like, oh yeah, the council told me to do this. What about Sydney? Either he'd be like, yeah, Sydney's on board too, or it's like, yeah, Sydney's no longer in control because the council said I should do this. Yeah, you have to listen to me now, so I speak for the council, that type of thing. So we'll see. And then at the end, we find out that Kyle's mom, Sarah, was taken by some dude who is played by C. Thomas Howell, which I'm just assuming is Simon, his dad. Kind of got spoiled on that. Like, I won't lie to you. I'll talk about it now because it happened. Some of the stuff I got spoiled on happened in this episode. The whole, like, Anderson cutting up Sydney, that and C. Thomas Howell being in the show were spoiled for me. Just because obviously the show's been out for literally more than a year. I mean, this particular season. And so when I'm looking up thumbnails, even though I'm specifically looking up thumbnails for those episodes, just because it's Google, the whole, like, images popping up kind of cover season 2 in general. So there's quite a few things that kind of got spoiled for me. Luckily, not a lot has, but there's been some things here and there. Like I said, those two particular things. There's definitely one more thing that got spoiled for me. I've kind of talked about it. Like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I don't know the exact circumstances. It's just like I said, these are not like full blown spoilers. They're just like one single image in each case. So I'll talk about the other thing that got spoiled for me. Once again, it's like no one's fault. It's just the circumstances of like, yeah, the show's been out for like a year, everywhere else. So obviously there's going to be a lot of images. Like, even when I'm not specifically looking up season 2 in general, but specific episodes in season 2 to get thumbnails for the respective reviews, without, I'm going off on the tangent, but that's just the whole point I'm trying to make. So nevertheless, I am very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us with all of this, obviously, because we do have Kyle's dad back in the picture, potentially, if that's who he is, but I'm assuming as much. Question is, why did he get Sarah? Like, where has he been this entire time? I guess maybe it wasn't till much later on that he found out about Sarah's situation. He probably came to visit her in all that time, like in between the incident between her and Kyle and now. He probably visited her without, Kyle or anyone noticing. But, or even maybe he kept an eye on Kyle, but it's like at no point in time did you come to him despite everything that was happening around him. Maybe he just felt like, maybe he's so focused on winning this war that he's like, okay, if I win this war fast enough, then I won't have to worry about going to my son right now. It's like, hey, he'll be okay when it's all said and done, because once I end this war, then I can come to him or something. I don't know. Because that is a question, like, what happens at the aftermath of all this, potentially. I mean, we still got, like, a long ways before we'd even get to that point, but I'm very interested to see where all this kind of takes us going forward into the next episode. With the whole Megan situation, with the whole Blake situation, with this whole Kyle, as well as like everyone from the lighthouse, the whole Beacon situation. Like, we know that there was someone else at that town hall meeting that kind of boosted Kyle's signal as a beacon. Like, I'm assuming, like I said, we still don't know who it was, whether it was his dad, whether it was like, Dakota in particular, but someone was there to kind of boost it. The reason why, Giles got possessed and everything, and also where Giles and Rosa's story go. I'm very interested to see where all that takes us next time. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.